Hi and welcome back to my channel. I'm just checking myself out because I don't really wear makeup anymore, so I don't even recognise myself in the little viewfinder of the camera. It's finally time to sit down and talk about my birth story, so what happened in labour, and just a bit before it and just after as well, and sort of recovery and how long we spent in hospital and things like that. So yeah, I absolutely love watching these. I've binged so many before I had the baby, and also just when I can't sleep on a night or when I'm just sat downstairs with her during the day. I'll watch so many different people's birth stories on YouTube. So yeah, I hope you find it interesting. I hope you sat comfy because I've just wrote up everything in my notes over the last week or so and just trying to remember all of the details because yeah, it's coming up 5 weeks in a few days since we actually had baby Sienna. She's just in the Moses basket. You might also be able to hear like a little gremlin in the background. That's just if she's stirring. She doesn't normally actually go in the Moses basket down here, but she loves napping on me during the day. Yeah, if you can just hear her stirring and just hear a little gremlin, that's just her in the background sat next to me, next to the camera. So yeah, let's get going because it's a long one with lots of details. So yeah, I hope you really enjoy it. And let's get started. So first things first, the 30th of August, so that was a Wednesday, so literally just before 1 o'clock that morning. I think we normally go to bed about half 11, 12, so we'd literally just gone to bed, and 12:45 I must have already got up for a wee because that's what you do when you're 9 months pregnant and you're up for like on the hour every hour needing a wee. Got up, had a normal wee, got back into bed trying to like roll myself into the pregnancy pillow, and then I just felt like a mini gush of liquid coming out of me, which was weird because I'd literally just been to the loo, so it's weird that something had set something off just as I was like rolling into my side on the pregnancy pillow. And then obviously the adrenaline starts running, like what was that, like surely that is my waters like partially breaking, or is that like the full amount? So I got back up, went into the ensuite and checked, and yeah, my knickers were definitely just like, there was just a clear liquid. And so sorry by the way, but I'm presuming if you're watching a birth story you're ready and you want all the gory details, so because there is some gory stuff in here. So yeah, we phoned the hospital. We watched enough birth shows over the last 9 months to last us a lifetime. We've literally like, there is no more shows for us to watch, I'm sure, to do with birth, labour, all of that jazz. So we'd learnt a lot over my pregnancy. I knew you basically need to let the hospital know if your waters do break or you think they've broke. So yeah, phoned up and they said the same thing, just if you want to come in like during the night. It's obviously like 1 in the morning now. If you want to come in, but if you want to get more sleep, go back to sleep. So I was like, yes, I want sleep. Yeah. After the adrenaline wore off after a few hours, finally got back to sleep. So we had breakfast, then it rolled into dinner time, and then basically I spent all afternoon in the hospital getting checks on the triage sort of ward, and yeah, they were brutal, like actually brutal, the tests that they did. It was 2 midwives it took, and it was like they used, I think they said it was the same sort of thing, if you can get my hand gesture, the same thing that's used for like a sweep, which I find quite uncomfortable as it is anyway. Not a sweep, sorry, a smear. Is it called a specular, or is that the thing that they actually put in? I'm not sure, but yeah, it was the same sort of situation as a smear, but whatever they were doing to check to see if my waters were broke was a lot different from getting a smear. It was so painful. Like Kyle said, he's like never, like bearing in mind a few weeks before he'd watched me get an actual sweep done, and he said he couldn't even tell by my face if I was even getting it done because I was like literally poker face, nothing was giving the game away. He said like my face just completely changed, like, and then I was like, like when's this ending, like no, I can't cope with this. But they said like it is a brutal thing, but it ended up being like a COVID sort of test where it's like literally definitive, like yes or no, your waters have or have not broken. And it came back that it hadn't, so I don't know what this clear liquid was. But yeah, I won't go into too much detail on this because Kyle said it changed him. Like seeing what came out of me when they pulled all of that, like the tool equipment thing out. And it was basically what I think it is. Well, they think it's the mucus plug. They're a bit between them, a bit like, is it? But they think that's what it was. And yeah, they basically pulled that out as they were pulling stuff out. So that was it. We went and got a McDonald's. We went and chilled at home on the night. Everything was normal. All of that week running up, I had been getting quite bad like period pains, like cramping, lower back pain, which I get with period pain as well. And I feel like it definitely ramped up on that night after we got home from the hospital, to the point where like I got a hot water bottle, took some paracetamol and stuff, and yeah, I'll see if there's anything else on this. Oh yeah, they also did, when we were at the hospital, they also did this thing called a presentation, which is basically like a mini scanner. So you can actually, it's like I think it was about this size, like a little screen on this scanner machine, where they can just put it onto your bump and they can actually just check the position of the baby as well, which was good, and they check the heartbeat and things like that as well. They thought the baby, when they were doing that specular like examination, they mentioned they think the baby is back to back with the limbs at the front of my belly, but it could still turn, and apparently like it can even turn when you're like at the pushing stage of labour, so that was reassuring to know. But yeah, a bit scary because I know people sort of freak out when you hear it's a back-to-back baby because it can be a lot more painful. I actually put here in my notes, had really strong period pains from 4ish when we'd left hospital, and bad backache too. Have had these all night tonight, on and off, taken paracetamol for this, but it hasn't really helped. And then yeah, we went to bed. Then on the Thursday at 2 o'clock in the morning, so again, I'd not had much sleep whatsoever because I wasn't asleep a lot of that night before when I thought my waters had broke, because it was the adrenaline on, oh my god, things are happening. And then was up all of that day, must have went to bed about midnight again, and then 2 o'clock in the morning my contractions must have been that bad they actually woke me up at that point, which looking back now, I do think that period pain and backache that I was having was surely like the really early stages of labour, like during that day. But yeah, at the 2 a.m. ones, it was pure contractions, where it was unbearable, to the point where I couldn't lay in bed. I had to get out of bed every time there was a contraction, and just move around to take my mind off it, like leaning over the bed, trying to walk it off. And it was a weird one because I thought here, it felt like I needed a wee, and there was so much pressure like in the pubic bone area that something was going to explode inside me like a balloon. Like it was like it was stretching so much, something was about to explode inside of me. That's the only way I could describe it. And then every time I got up, I'd then just be like, well, I'll go and have a wee while now I'm up and about anyway. Every time I sat on the toilet, it started a contraction, which is the weirdest thing in the world. Well, what I thought was the weirdest thing in the world. I got through to them at 5, and just mentioned like I just want to double check these are even contractions, because everything I've read online over like prepping for this labour time, everywhere it's sort of said it was like a feeling of like tightening of your bump. So like the bump area would feel all like tightening and it'd be like really sore. Whereas this was like really low down for me, like really low down. And then just the fact that every time I sat like in a squat position, so to like sit on a toilet, it would start a contraction, which I've never heard anyone speak about. But yeah, the woman on the phone like completely confirmed, like no, that's still normal, that can happen. and that is definitely a contraction from what you're saying. Also weird, every time I felt the baby move and wriggling around in my tummy, a contraction was starting as well. So either it was like the baby knew it was coming and they could feel something different inside, or the movements caused a contraction. It all just like completely baffles me, all of this. But yeah, I was basically up since 2 o'clock, laid in bed watching Gossip Girl while Kyle slept, because I said you might as well get some sleep because it could be a very, very long day ahead. And yeah, on the advice line they basically said have baths, just keep getting in and out of the bath. It can slow contractions down, it can actually stop them for a bit as well. Take paracetamol, and that's basically all I could offer advice wise. So I did that from 5 o'clock in the morning till 6. It was actually, I remember, I'm not a bath person at all, so, and definitely not over like summer when it was like quite warm when this was all going on. But yeah, I remember sat in the bath looking at when the sun was going to rise, and it was 6:13 that day. So I remember getting in the bath at 5 saying, like in my head, let's just stick this out till 6:13 when the sun rises and then get out. Hopefully it does make a difference and it does slow things down or stop them for a while, where I can then go and get some sleep, because I really need some sleep, and just to ease the contractions, to give me a bit of a break. And then yeah, once I got out of the bath I fell in and out of sleep from around just after 6ish till 7:30. Carl then got up, I stayed in and out of sleep with the contractions either stopping or they weren't waking me up, which was really good, so the bath definitely helped. Then the funniest thing on that day was I had a midwife come in that was already booked in for that day. She rocked up at 9 o'clock in the morning. I was upstairs busy having contractions, so Carl had to answer the door downstairs and basically just said, you're a bit late, like things have already started here at home. Yeah, and she couldn't basically do anything for us. Then I'd started timing the contractions and noticed they were still really sporadic, so there was sometimes 45 minutes, but then from 6:30 on that night, so it's been like basically that full day from 2 in the morning till 6:30 at night now, they were like 7, 8, 10, 9 minutes, which was like so crystal clear. They were becoming more regular, but that was the first time they'd been that regular from 6:30. By 8 o'clock on the night I was panicking, just thinking I don't want to get by like the rest of this night going into early morning just on paracetamol and doing baths. I could phone the advice line and yeah, basically just let them know how close they were. I'm sure when I phoned in the morning they said to only come in when you're three minutes apart contraction wise, which I thought, how does anyone deal with that, trying to get ready to go to hospital and then get in the car and then deal with it in the car and then walking into hospital. So yeah, I just laid it on thick. Like apparently we're having a back-to-back baby, we're having a baby that's on the larger side. This is what the timings are like at the minute, and I'm just really struggling to get by basically just on paracetamol now. So yeah, I phoned the hospital and they were really nice. They just said come and get checked. My intention with that was, I actually said to Kyle before we left, I know we're going to end up getting sent home because I can still deal with these, but it was just thinking ahead and just, it's going to get later on the night, I'm going to get more and more tired, then it's going to go into like when it's dark on a night. I just want, if they can give me any stronger pain relief to deal with like getting through this night. So we didn't pack a load of the like nice to have bits that we'd planned in the hospital bags, because these contractions still weren't really close together and had only been like this for the last hour. And I just really didn't want to be getting out of bed when it's pitch black and having to go out in the cold into the hospital, sitting around in a waiting room and stuff. So yeah, I thought let's just make this decision now. It's 8 o'clock, it's still quite light outside, like let's go. So yeah, just after 8 o'clock we left for the hospital, and sod's law in the 45 minutes, because I'd phoned at like 7:30ish. Since phoning the hospital I'd only had one contraction, which was in the car on the way to hospital, which is insane because they'd been regular and then went back to 45 minutes apart. We got to the maternity triage at 8:30. We were seen about half an hour later, and they did the usual heartbeat checks, did another presentation scan to check the baby's position, and she said the head is really far down, still back to back but slightly to the side now, and we needed baby's head to turn slightly. She said it makes labour a lot worse because the head circumference ends up bigger in the back to back position, so no wonder the pressure felt so intense down there during contractions. They did an internal check just to check how dilated I was, and we couldn't believe it when she said we were already 4 centimetres dilated. And the next step was going to the delivery suite. I think one of them actually said you normally need to be 4 centimetres dilated to then go to the delivery suite. So I think me and Kyle just both looked at each other like, whoa. We were expecting to come home tonight and spend the night here. So yeah, that was a big shock for us. So after all of those checks, we got booked into the delivery suite. So that was at 10 p.m, a few hours later. And yeah, I'll try and insert some photos as I talk now. We're in hospital, like as and when I'm telling you this story. So we got to the delivery suite. The first thing that we noticed was a baby hat, and it was a pink one, and there was only a pink hat in the resus table in the room. I remember messaging the girls just like, is this a sign? Like, this is so strange. That, like, I'm just a big believer in signs. We mentioned we wanted an epidural straight away, and the midwife was amazing that we had. She talked us through it all and let us know there was only one anaesthetist on in the hospital that night. So if I'm sure that I definitely want one, she'd get this sorted ASAP in case he gets called out to a theatre, or I think he ended up he was just about to go in to do an emergency C-section. So yeah, she basically said like, I'll get him booked in for after he's done in theatre with that. And yeah, just had to hope and pray there was no more emergencies where he'd need to get rushed off for that. In the meantime, she was like, do you want some gas and air? So took that and gave that a go. And yeah, it just made me really lightheaded and felt like really tipsy. And for me, I don't know if this is like the purpose of it, but it's more like a distraction for your head that it's even happening, and you just feel a bit out of it. The pain was still as strong down there. It's not like pain relief, it's just more mental relief that you're just a bit just away with the fairies a bit. So yeah, it did help. It was something to focus on, like with breathing and things like that, but yeah, it didn't for me anyway, get rid of the pain feeling. She then, just because he was taking a while in theatre, the anaesthetist, this was like hours had gone by, she did say, while we're waiting still, because we don't know how long it's going to be, do you want a pethidine injection? Which annoyingly I said yes to because I'm greedy and just wanted all the pain relief. I'm not like ever going to play a hero. I do really regret it, because I am a sickly person. Like, I'd been obviously sick for the full 9 months of pregnancy, and yeah, it did make me sick. I did warn her, and I said I'm quite a sickly person, so she said she'd give me an anti-sickness injection at the same time as the pethidine, which didn't stop it. I ended up throwing up about an hour later. But yeah, I really just regret that, because I obviously didn't know I was going to be sick because I'd had an anti-sickness injection, was laid down. By the time I'd laid down and actually was throwing up, I'd already had the epidural as well, so I couldn't get myself back up off the bed quick enough, and ended up choking on my own sick. Couldn't then breathe, so then was just like coughing and spluttering everywhere. It was just awful. There was just sick all over me. It was just not a great look. Labour is not glam. But yeah, I feel like not a lot of people talk about like any sickness that they have. Maybe not a lot of people do in labour, but yeah, for me that was one of the worst bits of the entire labour. Just, I hate being sick. So yeah, I should have really known better and just held out and just kept on the gas and air, because it was quite bearable at this point still. 2:15 in the morning, the anaesthetist gave me the epidural. He was absolutely amazing. Sienna just having a little stir around in the basket. it didn't hurt in the slightest, the epidural. So anyone who's wanting one, who hears the horror stories that I'd heard about, it's the worst injection ever, it's the most brutal part, like it's worse than actual just normal childbirth. I don't know what these people were experiencing, because the epidural experience I had was him putting a local anaesthetic into my back, which I'm presuming numbs that entire area where then the epidural goes in, and I didn't even feel the epidural going in. Whatever that, I'm sure people years ago used to talk about, it's this huge injection, like a huge needle, but yeah, I didn't see it and didn't feel a thing. I would 100% recommend the epidural. It was an absolute dream. Didn't feel a thing. And yeah, after I threw up on myself after the epidural, and then I think I did it another time like half an hour later, but yeah, basically I had to just, as soon as I felt like the sick sweats, as soon as I felt those and just my body taking a turn, I had to basically shout for Carla or a midwife, like someone sit me up like really quickly. And there was just ended up like a huge pad in the side of the room, just a huge sick bucket things to put under me, like little trays. Yeah, and there was one time I couldn't get my words out quick enough to say it, and yeah, I think I ended up throwing up on a midwife as well at one point at 3:12 in the morning. So this is now the 1st of September. Bearing in mind this has been going on a long time. 3:12 in the morning on the 1st of September, my midwife broke my waters with the hook thing that they use. The bed was completely soaked through. She couldn't believe how much liquid there was. Like literally, you could hear the gush. There was so much just like flowing out of me. And then also weird, I've not heard anyone speak about this, but I must have had that much fluid. Obviously I couldn't feel a thing contraction wise because of the epidural, but I could sit and look through the way to Kyle and say, I'm having a contraction now, aren't I? And he'd check and say yes. And I'd know because liquid was coming out of me every time I had a contraction. Like more of my waters were coming out, which was wild. Also, while I didn't write this down, but another weird thing where I didn't think it was contractions in the first place was everywhere I'd read and heard like stories, it was the fact that your contractions start with a bit of pain, peak, and then sort of ease off. All of my contractions, even like in the early stages, it would literally come on and be the most intense pain, last the full minute or minute and a half, and then just go off. So there was no like building up and then building back down. It was just a constant like thorough pain, which is another reason I was questioning, like, are these definitely contractions, because this is not what I've heard about before. Yeah, so the midwife went through about 30 bed pads for me, needing to change them after nearly every contraction for like hours after she broke my waters. The midwife then said a bit later on that I was just about there dilated wise most of that afternoon. There was literally a tiny bit of cervix that needed to be pushed through. They checked an hour later and it was still the same, and they were waiting on a doctor to come and see me about going on a hormone drip as well. They put me on a hormone drip and it increased my contractions too much apparently, like a few hours before this all happened, so they had to take me off it. And then they were waiting on a doctor just to confirm what they thought was the best sort of way to go forward, to risk it again or to not. And they also think that's another reason why I was so sick as well, because this hormone drip, which apparently can have that effect. She's just stirring. Yeah, so at this point I'd had 2 anti-sickness injections and then was put on an anti-sickness drip as well and was still throwing up. So yeah, the doctor basically was a bit hesitant to give me it again with how sick I was being off the hormone drip the last time. I'd had a few examinations at 3 o'clock in the afternoon by the doctor. She asked me to push while she was examining, and she said she can't feel the cervix when pushed, so she's happy to like confirm that I'm fully dilated. Said I was basically 9 3/4, which was, I was like, it's very Harry Potter vibes. But yeah, they've just said to let the contractions start and do their thing for 2 hours, keep them going, and then C, about actively pushing from 5 o'clock on the afternoon. So this whole time I was completely in and out of sleep, because with no pain being felt, I obviously hadn't slept much 2 nights before, and then the night before as well, and then all of this day and night that I've been in hospital too. So as soon as the epidural came at like 2, 3, whatever it was in the morning, I was flat out, like could not stay awake. It was crazy. Had a little stirrer. I think she just wanted her little afternoon cuddles, didn't you? She's so cute. Hopefully this long story puts her back to sleep. So yeah, just after 5 o'clock on that afternoon, I started pushing, and that was a mad experience because I didn't feel obviously the contractions because of the epidural. They'd just tell me one was coming from the monitor attached to my pump, and then it felt awful in my, like, I remember saying to the girls that were helping me, I can't believe like the weirdest pain in this like pushing stage is my head hurts from the pressure of like pushing and like obviously trying to breathe out as much as you can, just holding that breath. You just feel a bit out of it from, yeah, how much pressure is in your head. It's crazy. They said I was pushing perfectly, but nothing was happening. So I pushed for an hour, but they hadn't really got anywhere, and they mentioned the baby's heart rate had dropped when the hour was up. So it had went from the most chilled, like, I'll see if there's any photos or videos to put in here, but yeah, it was the most chilled room. We had the lights quite like dimmed, so the main like big clinical lights weren't on. We had our playlist playing, we had fairy lights up. It was just great. And then 2 amazing midwives that had been there for all of that day, since 7 o'clock that morning. And it went from that to about 10 different staff members, at least, must have been at least 10, in our room, the clinical lights back on, my legs up in stirrups, and yeah, there was doctors, midwives, there was assistants, everyone doing their own like little job. It was just crazy. It changed like literally within the blink of an eye. And it was basically, we'd done that hour of pushing, the baby heart rate was dropping, and basically it needed some sort of intervention. So yeah, the doctor that had been checking on me throughout the day, she basically said we're gonna have to have some like assisted delivery. It'll be with forceps. So yeah, got in stirrups, and yeah, she basically was delivering Sienna. Oh, and another thing they said, the doctor said they would have to use forceps, and she was going to do an episiotomy on me. I couldn't feel a thing, so I was like, you go for it. Like, I was literally so chilled. And about 15 to 20 minutes later, after they all came in, Sienna was born at 18:31 with a little help from forceps. And that is basically the birth story. I feel like I've just talked, but yeah, that is most of the details. And then anyone who's interested, yeah, I'm just gonna rattle through just some details on just after the birth. So that night oh yeah, actually I haven't wrote this section down. So basically after she was born at 6:30, she was placed straight onto me for skin to skin. She did a cry straight away, which was amazing and so reassuring. But then they were doing it where they sort of really like rub hard with like towels just to give the baby like a little shake to sort of like shock them, like, this is where you are now, you're not in the womb anymore. And she basically wasn't reacting how they wanted her to. Was maybe like a bit floppy. I don't think they actually really said what was wrong. But yeah, she basically got took off me. The cord was cut. Kyle did that really quickly. And it was sort of rushed because they needed to get her on the resus table. The child doctor was already in the room anyway, ready to examine near that table. I think she just maybe comes in because it's a forceps delivery. There's more things that can go wrong. It's a bit more dangerous. And obviously it was a doctor delivering me, not a midwife, because of forceps as well. So yeah, she got put onto the resus table, and I remember saying to Kyle, like, you just go and be with her, like, I'm fine, just lay here, I'm not in any pain, I just want to make sure like you're with her. So he went over and he was getting lots of photos and videos and things like that. The doctor was doing all of like the checks and just trying to get her just to be a bit more like active and awake. And yeah, thankfully she was absolutely fine, and then got placed back on me. Did feel like it was a good 5-10 minutes she was away from me. And yeah, she got placed back on me, doing skin to skin, while I was getting stitched up. And yeah, I think everyone, it just feels like a blur, because it was like everything at once. Like, one thing I'd describe it as is, if you've ever watched that Michael McIntyre show with the Midnight Game show on, it was literally like that, where you're just in bed, you're just chilling, and then out of the blue, just loads of different random people you've never met before all come in, and then all of a sudden they're just gone again, and you're just sort of left with this newborn baby, just like, what has just happened? But yeah, she was on me, and then they basically said, like, we give you about an hour, just you three, just in this room. We'll all leave, you can get some tea and toast. I think they come and do like little checks, but apart from that, you're sort of just left on your own, which is amazing, but it is crazy at the same time. Just plonked with this newborn baby. And then they came back in, and it was a few different midwives. They came in and were just asking if I wanted like a bed bath, just to clean up everywhere. And obviously I'd been in that bed for so many hours, like from literally the night before, I can't even count up. But yeah, so they did like a bath for me, while Kyle just had her on him for a while. And then yeah, around 10 o'clock we went through to we were like wheeled down to the postnatal ward. And yeah, I think Kyle stayed till about 1 in the morning, and then had to go home, which was awful. And you're just dealing with a newborn, like, it was the most surreal thing ever. And then the next day they said we'd be staying in another night as well, just because I had really low iron, because I'd lost so much blood during labour. So they wanted to just keep an eye on me and then decide what like the next course of action was with that. And also during that first night, once Kyle had gone home, one of the first midwives looking after us did her usual checks and raised concerns over the fact that they thought she had a broken collarbone, but obviously she's not a doctor to confirm anything. So flagged this with the doctor's team on the ward, and she was lovely. She was actually the woman that was doing all the checks and sort of got her to come around straight after delivery as well. It was the same woman. So she did the check on the collarbone and sort of said like she's pretty sure it's broken, but they can't confirm anything until there's been an x-ray done. So the x-ray will be done in the morning. So yeah, so she got wheeled off in the morning once Kyle was there. I couldn't really walk properly from the epidural, because I'd had the epidural in for so long. I think I had the epidural for 16 hours it was. So yeah, I couldn't really walk properly, and there was no way I could actually make it down to some other ward in the hospital. So Kyle thankfully was here, and yeah, he went down with her and a midwife in the cot. And yeah, the x-ray came back and confirmed it was a broken collarbone. That was done during delivery, which was traumatizing for us. Like, we were just gutted, like, knowing someone so small and innocent and little, there's something like that that's happened to them. And yeah, it proper set me off as well, because Kyle was saying it was just awful seeing her. I'll pop a photo in if I've got it on my phone, just of her like actually getting the x-ray done, or just before it, and she's just on this little slab, and she's this tiniest little person, and I think he said, like, they actually said she's the youngest person they think they've ever x-rayed in the hospital, because she'll have only been like 12-16 hours old at this point. So with that happening, they wanted to keep her in as well, just to monitor her. They'd give her some paracetamol as well, just in case she was in any pain. So I just wanted to monitor her, because I don't think newborns, especially like less than a day old, should be on paracetamol. So yeah, just wanted to make sure she was okay on that. Then the day after that, we were in the process of being discharged, but for some reason Sienna stopped feeding off the boob, and my express colostrum as well, she wouldn't take that, and even formula as well for basically that entire day. So we were getting ready to go, and yeah, then that happened, and they were a bit like, we don't want you to leave, and then it's going to be a lot harder like then coming back in. So yeah, I was basically breastfeeding for the first 36 to 48 hours or so, and expressing colostrum in between the feeds as well. Our midwife at the time noticed Sienna was uncomfortable on my left boob, because the collarbone she'd be laid against to feed off that was the one that was broken. So they were getting a bit worried about that, and they didn't want us to leave until she began feeding properly. The midwives were amazing, they all got involved, everyone trying their own different like techniques to try and get her to feed a bit better. I had one expressing me most of that day, and support me with all the different feeding techniques. I think she was like a feeding sort of specialist on the ward, but still nothing she was doing was even working. So she was talking about flagging it to doctors to basically get her admitted to the neonatal to be fed through a tube. So I was just an emotional wreck. I feel like there'd been a lot going on that day, especially when we thought everything was fine and we were going home, to find out she's got a broken collarbone, then she'd stopped feeding. Then I was having to change from breastfeeding to trying formula, just feeling like I wasn't doing good enough. It was a lot. And then also on top of that, once I was having a little breakdown, where it was definitely the pregnancy hormones, I think just everything was setting me off, and every time a different midwife came in and just said, oh, how are you doing, like, I'd start crying. Anyone asking me when I'm a bit emotional how I am, I will bawl my eyes out. During that next night, a doctor came in around 2 AM, and I was like half asleep, and said they need to do checks on her kidney function because she'd not been weeing, so it's like quite concerning for them. So again, she got wheeled off just in the middle of the night, and I was just sort of laid in bed in the dark like, oh my god, like someone's took her again, like what is going on? And obviously Kyle wasn't there at this time, he'd had to go home. But yeah, so she got blood test done, and then they came back at like 5 in the morning, so I got woke up from the doctor coming to tell me the news that thankfully there was nothing wrong at all with her kidneys, and they put it down to the fact that if she's not fed well, or not fed at all basically all of that last day, she will just be dehydrated, and there's not a lot to actually wee anyway. And then randomly later in those early hours of that morning, she did start taking the formula and continued all of that Monday. So we were finally discharged Monday at midday, and we'd gone in at Thursday night, we'd gone in at 8, so it was a long time. It felt like we were there. And I think that's my entire story. I did do an Instagram box just with any more questions, just to make sure I cover as much detail as I can. Birth and experience, gone through that. Did it go as you planned? I planned nothing. I did want an epidural, so I did get that, and that was basically it. I didn't plan for anything. I'd put in my birth plan, I'll take any pain relief, give birth in any position, and yeah, I had no like really strong preferences though, apart from the epidural really. I was really open to everything, and I feel like being like that was such it gave me such a positive experience because I wasn't sort of disheartened or let down by anything. So yeah, I'd definitely say just go really open-minded. As long as that baby comes out healthy and happy, look, what more could you want? The epidural experience, absolutely amazing. I would recommend it to anyone. Like, it was just an actual dream. We did have forceps because this person's asked if there was any interventions. Forceps again, absolutely fine. And again, another thing I was terrified of the full pregnancy was not the labour. I was actually really chill about the labour and didn't get scared once. The only bit I was ever scared about was the tearing afterwards, and the stitches and things like that. And it's probably the only thing that was actually really chill. So I obviously got cut, and then it was stitched amazing, to the point where when I've had midwife checks in the few weeks after we've got home, every midwife said like they've been done amazing. Like, literally, one of them was even struggling to see where it was because it was healing that well and it had been done that well. So yeah, don't worry about that sort of stuff, because it was absolutely fine. Like, it was a really positive experience getting that done. So yeah, no regrets whatsoever on any of those. What were you stressed about being overdue? I'm 40+1 and can feel anxiety. I didn't feel any anxiety, like nothing. Again, it was just having that open mind on what will be, and she will be here. I was in a hospital, I had all the experts around me and a great birthing partner. What more do you need? Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Like, I was just not anxious at all. And the only thing, the tiniest bit of worry was just, I've heard bad stuff about inductions, but you hear bad stuff about every single aspect of labour, but then there's always positive ones to balance it out. But I know quite a few people don't like being induced, so that was the tiniest bit of anxiety. But yeah, I do think me going for that check on my waters breaking on the Wednesday definitely got things started. It was basically like the most severe sweep, it felt like, you could possibly ask for, which I do think ended up starting my labour naturally. So I am actually grateful whatever that was did happen, because I could have potentially had to be induced like a few days later. Did you find the forceps delivery terrifying? No. Again, just having that epidural, I felt nothing. I literally couldn't feel anything going on, so yeah, it didn't really terrify me at all. And she healed amazing as well. The bruises and marks on her face were basically like completely gone by about day 4, day 5. So yeah, literally no complaints. And the only thing I do different is not have that pethidine injection. But everything else, I literally wouldn't have changed a thing. It was a really, really positive experience, and I'm so happy. But yeah, just touching on how amazing Kai was. Like, a supportive birth partner is the best thing in the world. He was literally by my side through it all. He topped up my epidural like every 10 minutes. He was doing it, so I didn't actually press the button, I don't think, more than like once or twice randomly. He did it all, and then obviously I was in and out of sleep, so even when I was sleeping he was topping up for me to make sure I couldn't feel any pain. He was down the business end. He's the most squeamish person in the world and was absolutely fine down the business end. And he said it was like amazing at the same time as being very gory, just for him to comprehend what had actually happened. And he actually got so many photos and videos of all of that end and the experience, a head being out, them delivering the placenta and things like that, like everything. Because he said it, like, from that end it was the most traumatic, like, crazy labour. When we've watched all these labour shows, nothing was like that, and I've seen videos and photos of it all obviously now, of my labour and the pushing and things like that, and yeah, it looked a lot worse than anything we've watched on any of those labour shows. And I was just sat up the top end, obviously just chilling, not aware of any of it. So it was amazing him just like documenting it all for me to be able to process what's actually just happened, because it is all of a bit of a blur. But no, he was absolutely amazing and has been already like the most amazing dad. And yeah, and then he was the one who announced she was a girl, which we wanted in the birth plan. We brought that in. And he said it was funny because she came out, but she came out like such a lady, she had her legs crossed, so he couldn't work out for ages, obviously, if it's a boy or a girl. So I think the midwife had to like sort of open the legs. And yeah, he got the cord, and yeah, just been amazing. And we couldn't be more in love, could we? She's just looking at me. So she is 4.5 weeks at the minute, and just being a little dream baby on him. But yeah, this is the longest video I've ever done. Hello. The longest video I've ever done, but I really wanted this to look back on because I will forget so many of these little details. And I could literally watch these for hours on end, like all the details of people telling me their birth stories. So yeah, I hope you love it, and yeah, we'll see us again soon. Bye bye. Bye bye.